Why, hello there, friends. Thanks for clicking on this video and joining in on what I hope to be a successful experiment with homemade gunpowder. Or maybe not. Let me explain. We all know that Swiss is the best of the best, the cleanest of the cleanest, the fastest of the fastest. All kinds of world records were set with Swiss gunpowder. We all know the bragging rights of Swiss. And I do know that myself personally, I will never make a gunpowder as equivalent to Swiss. That's not my goal, okay? I want to be able to produce a gunpowder that is sufficient enough for me to hunt with, and as I've showed with some of those little games and the tests that I'm doing, that even as of right now, I'm beginning to think maybe aspen's a better charcoal choice than juniper. But then again, I'll just add another 10 grains of juniper and I'm getting those feet per second that are more than enough of taking game. But last night I had an epiphany. What if I took 100 grams of Swiss and put it in my ball mill and crush it? What would happen then? What would be the comparisons be between Swiss and my homemade gunpowder? I have one question in this regard. The graphite. Just simply because I don't know what type of graphite Swiss is using. I suspect, but I don't know for a fact, it might be similar to what Elephant was using. Now if you go back on this channel a couple of years ago, almost 3 years ago now I think, I explained and showed in a video that I took some factory 2F Elephant, put it in my ball mill, ground it up, because my intention was to take that 2F and grind it up and resize it to 3F. And what I learned is that the graphite that at least Elephant was using at the time would not blend into the mix of what would be the potassium nitrate, the charcoal, and the sulfur. It actually separated itself, and when I went to screen it out, I could see little tiny slivers of what I'm assuming was just graphite. And I'm pretty safe at assuming that. So then I took and tumbled it. I should say pucked it or screened it. I don't remember what I did at that time, if I was screening it or pucking. And more than likely I was probably still screening it. But anyhow, that's going to be my experiment. So I'm going to take 100 grams of Swiss, weigh it out, put it in the tumbler, and I'm only going to mix it for an hour, and then I'm going to check on it because I want to see if the graphite is separating like it did with the Elephant gunpowder. So I'm going to get this measured out in the tumbler, and I'll see you in just a moment, but for me, it'll be just a little over an hour. Stay tuned. Okay, there we are, 100.1. I'm not going to worry about that 0.1 gram. Here's the Swiss. As you can see, there's quite a bit in that jar. I did thoroughly clean out my ball mill, so I won't have any cross-contamination. And for those of you that think maybe this is a crazy experiment to do, well, trying to level the playing field. Think about what I'm trying to accomplish here. We're all told the best of the best, fastest of the fastest, but how many people have actually taken the Swiss, put it in their own tumbler, break it back down, and puck it with, in my case, a 12-ton jack? How will it compare at that point? Because it's one thing to say, yeah, the best of the best, fastest of the fastest, cleanest of the cleanest, but that's based on what Swiss does. How does this react based on what you do? That's going to be my question. And for those that might think this is a little crazy or off base, good. I'd probably admit that too. But I'm never going to buy a pound of Swiss gunpowder at 28 bucks a pound when I can make the stuff myself. Knowing what I know now, just add another 10-15 grains and you're getting more than sufficient feet per second in velocity for killing an animal. But leveling the playing field between this Swiss and my gunpowder, how does it compare really? Well, hopefully we're all going to find out, and my only concern is, will that graphite separate like it did with the elephant gunpowder? Hopefully we'll see. I don't know how well the camera can pick it up, but if you can see what I see, you can see those little tiny specks of the sheen and the shiny. This is what it looked like when I did the elephant gunpowder. So what I'm going to do is, at this point, I'm going to take this ball mill and I'm going to filter this gunpowder through one of those very, very micro fine filters like you would with a paint. And I'm going to get out the little pieces of graphite that I can right now. Okay, I screened it off. Not through the microfilter, but this is what I screened just through my 3F screen, just to get rid of the media. And I think you guys can hopefully see a little bit better the chunks of graphite compared to what would be the powder. So I'm going to run this through the micro screen and see what's left behind, and probably put it in for another 30 minutes just in case. At this point I'm thinking it's not really necessary, but hey, what have I got to lose? And just in case anybody happens to be wondering, yes, this is a brand new filter. Now I know this is a little time consuming, but in actuality this is how I screen out my charcoal before I put it into my container to mix it, because I want the charcoal dust to be completely free of anything, well, I guess, that can't go through this microfilter. So it's going to take me a little bit. I'm about the end of my 3rd teaspoon here. I usually put about 3 of them in here at a time and then just kind of shake it until everything that can go through the micro screen has gone through. Well, I'm not willing to concede that that's all graphite. I'm sure that there's still some gunpowder left in that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the other portion of it back into the ball mill, mill it for another half hour, and then I'm going to double screen it. And then when I get done with that, I'll go ahead and double screen this, and we'll see just how much graphite I can remove from that gunpowder. Okay, it's been another 30 minutes. It's been an hour total. And I can tell you, just looking at it right here in the sunlight, there is a whole lot less shiny stuff. And whatever is in there shiny, it's very, very small. So I'm going to run this through the filter and see what we got, and then weigh the amount of what was removed. Remember, we started with 100.1 grams. So when I get this screened, I'll put it in the glass jars and we'll weigh and see what the difference is. So just in case if anybody is curious, you know, when you glue these caps on the bottom, there's always some powder that's going to lodge itself between, you know, the bottom of the cap and the side of this. And I do go through and wrap it with a little rubber hammer just to dislodge any powder that might be, you know, wedged in there. And I pretty much got it all out. Now at the very bottom of this, I don't know how well the camera can pick it up, but I am seeing some larger chunks of what I would think is the graphite. Now I will give you my opinion and my assessment. When I did this several years ago with the elephant, I noted that what I thought was the graphite was more, you know, more hair-like. This seems to be more finer, perhaps, so I don't know if Swiss obviously is come up with their own recipe for graphite or something to that, but I will tell you this, what I assume is a graphite, looks a lot different than it did with the elephant. So I'm going to go ahead and get this screened, and I'm going to put everything in a pile, put it in a glass jar, and we'll see what the difference is. So to give you guys a little better look in the sunlight, I'm guessing that the shiny stuff that you're seeing is the graphite. And like I noted years ago when I did this same experiment with the elephant, I could not get that graphite to break down and, you know, mill itself into the gunpowder itself. So let me go get this strained and we'll see what we got. So before I finish screening this off for the third time, I want to make a note that this gunpowder is much darker in color than anything that I've ever made and put in the ball mill for about 30 hours. Tends to come out like a light grayish color, and as you can see, this is pretty dark. Now, referencing back to a comment that the fella on Hoffman Reproductions, the comment that he made was that they stopped the charcoaling process just as it goes from like the dark brown to black. And I'm kind of wondering if this is that color range. But with that being stated, I will recall that when I charcoaled my basswood, I did that. Just as it went from the dark brown to black, I stopped the charring process and broke it all up and got it into the fine powder, put it in the ball mill for about 30 hours, pulled it out, and it was still a very light gray color. So I'm just curious if it's because of the alder that it has this color. Now, I do have a friend coming down from Colorado, hopefully to visit me at the Cache La Plew Rendezvous this year, and he has got some buckthorn alder that he's going to gift me. So we'll see at that time if this question can be answered. Okay, this is all the powder that I have left that would not go through the mesh. This is what was left over after the second time I put it back into the ball mill to tumble for an additional 30 minutes. So I'm pretty confident that I've got most of the graphite out of it. I'll show you what I have in the can in the sunlight, and we'll see if there's anything left behind at that point. Well, it's not a whole lot in there. That's the bottom of the can there, that shiny edge. It looks like most of that graphite is out. I might just try to screen this again. Don't really know if it's worth it at this point, but I might just do that and then go to pucking it. And when I puck it, I'll be using my 50 mixture of water acetone with the 1-inch pucking die, and I'm going to dry it here in the dashboard of my truck, break it up, and when I get all of that accomplished, I'll meet you out at the shooting range. Alright, let's see how much weight was removed by presumably removing the heavy graphite glazing in this Swiss powder. Turn the scale on, put the container on it, the glass jar, tear it, and this is what I have right here, so let's see what it weighs. .1 grams. Now, if what I read the other day about graphite coating becoming explosive with an oxygenator and 100 grams of gunpowder, that's quite a bit of added explosive. You know, even if a guy was to take away half of that, you've still got an additional 7.5 grams of what I read previously in a video in explosive powder. Would it make the gunpowder more powerful? Would it make it burn cleaner? Seems like it. At least everything that we've read about it. But just to be fair, I do recognize that there's probably some charcoal left in there, or, you know, the mixture of the gunpowder. How much, I don't know. I'm not going to get that anal about it. But even at this point of the experiment, that's still quite a bit of weight. And when I weighed those gunpowders the other day, in a previous video, and I was trying to explain to everybody that Swiss is heavier by volume. Well, is that attributed to the added weight of the graphite? You guys decide for yourself. I know where my mind's at. Alright, so I'm going to get to pucking this gunpowder up and drying it out, grinding it up, sizing it, and we'll see where it stands. So not doubting that there's some gunpowder left behind in what I perceive to be the graphite after an hour being in my tumbler, not crushing, I'm going to go ahead and put a match to this and see what happens. And there's the same familiar smoky residue. Oh well. So to conclude this video, and as you can see it's a different day, I have managed to grind up some of that Swiss gunpowder, and I will tell you two things that I have noted. I mentioned earlier in the video that looking in that container and everything, the charcoal looked a little bit darker. When I got it out into the direct sunlight, and I didn't record it, it really looked like a dark brown instead of black. And when I pucked it, and I'm letting the pucks dry, they're beginning to turn to the normal color that I'm familiar with seeing when I puck, say, my juniper or the basswood or the willow, any of that. So as they're drying, they're turning out to be that light grayish color. Now I've got 4 pucks to go. I don't think I get much done today. Right now it's 65 degrees with 80% humidity, and we got a ton of rain coming our direction. So I'll have to leave these in the house for a few days, wait till I get a good drying day to put them on the dashboard of my truck. But before I get to this, I want to just maybe explain a little something. When I was 14 years old, I was already helping my father rebuild engines. First engine was a Pinto 4-cylinder. When I turned 16 years old, my dad got me a Dodge Dart with a slant 6. Rebuilt that engine. When I was 18, I had a Pontiac Catalina. I rebuilt that 400 engine. I got rid of that and I rebuilt a 428 4-bolt main. Then, for the course of my life, I've rebuilt Ford 390s, Ford 302s. So I understand completely how fuel would work and operate at its optimal in an internal combustion engine. Now, with that being stated, I can understand how maybe Swiss has the right and proper fuel mixture to burn clean and more powerful. To me, when I look at the 75-15-10 formula and then hear how heavily graphited it is, I look at this graphite as nothing more than going down a quarter-mile racetrack and hitting a nitrous oxide switch. That's how I view this. To me, these things aren't all that impressive because, again, nitrous oxide. Let that sink in for a moment or two. Now I understand from the perspective of how I'm making my gunpowder, I am compacting it or pucking it with a 12-ton jack. So my gunpowder is not as heavily compressed as, say, somebody doing it with a 20 or 40-ton jack, or if you're lucky enough to get a 1,000-ton jack, yeah, you're going to get more gunpowder in that little puck as it pertains to volume. Okay? I get that. But at the same time, my gunpowder, I'm not adding nitrous oxide. I'm just not. So what I want to do at this moment is I want to take what I've already repucked of the Swiss gunpowder, put 80 grains in my RCBS scale, balance it out, and put it in powder measure and see where it stands. If we're going to be comparing apples to apples, which we're not. Because I can guarantee you, because I pucked this with a 12-ton jack, I'm probably going to be somewhere between 90 and 95. I guarantee you that I'm going to have to add about 10 more grains of this to equal the Swiss to get the velocities that people want to brag about. So, let me get this accomplished and I'll show you where I'm at. Okay, there's the balance scale. You can see she's just about right there at the 0. I would say she's there. There's the 80 grains. And there's the gunpowder. Let me get that transferred over to the powder measure and we'll make a note where it's at. Okay, just to make sure that I have enough room, I'm starting my powder measure at above 100 grains. And I'm going to just pour it in there, keep it static. I'm not going to settle it. And then I'm going to push it up to the top and we'll see where it stops. And obviously I have to do this off camera because I'm doing this with one hand. So hopefully you guys can see I'm just a hair above full. I could drop that down just a little bit, level it off. But I want you guys to see, if you can, I'm above the 80 mark, closer to the 90. About that 10 grains. See? Again, numbers across the chronograph when making your homemade gunpowder, and having weak gunpowder can be overcome by adding another 10, 15 grains, and your gunpowder is no longer weak. Let's compare apples to apples. If you understand that your gunpowder tends to be weak because you're using a 12-ton jack, just add 10 grains. And my question is this: how much a pound are you making your homemade gunpowder for compared to buying $30 a pound Swiss, or even $25 a pound Schutzen or Goex, anything? Hopefully you guys can see that. So here we have a pile of Swiss and a pile of my homemade gunpowder. Can you really tell the difference between the two? Right here, right now, I'll tell you what the difference is. This is the Swiss, and it's actually a little more lighter gray, or maybe a little more brownish gray than my homemade juniper. The only difference is just you can see, and I don't know if the camera can point it out, but I can see just a slight variation in color. This one's got more of a brown hue to it, which is a Swiss, and this is more gray. Now, Let me get the camera repositioned and I'll tell you what I'm going to do in one of my tests coming up. So in case you hadn't figured it out already, why is the Swiss a little browner, got more of a brown hue to it than say my alligator juniper or anything that I've made, is because they actually stop the charring process at that color. So if you think Swiss is the best of the best, yada yada yada, then you might want to make sure that you char your charcoal just to that perfect spot. Otherwise, you're going to get an inferior gunpowder, say like with, I don't know, alligator juniper or basswood or cottonwood, anything. But am I going to do that? No. If it happens out of a stroke of luck, yeah, sure. But until then, I'm not going to go out of my way to stop the charring process just to get that perfect shade of, you know, brownish gray. It's not going to happen. That's why I view things differently, just like when I was rebuilding motors and things like that. I fully understand nitrous oxide, burning a higher octane, doing what you need to do to make a naturally aspirated carburetor in a Ford LTD with a 390 get 30 miles to the gallon. Because I've done that. I'm not going to tell you how, but I've done that. And I remember how to do it. Okay, so before I conclude and say goodbye to everybody, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do in one of my tests. Since I have a little bit of nitrous oxide right here, and granted, I understand there's probably chunks of, you know, the Swiss gunpowder, but I don't believe at this point it's all compacted with the same density because I put it in a ball mill and I've changed that. That's been changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to the best of my ability to figure out how much I could add into, say, like an 80 grain charge. And then shoot this high octane fuel with, say, maybe my alligator juniper and see what the chronograph tells me. But there again, I understand not all chronographs agree. Elevation and temperature changes everything. That's why I'm kind of recording what I've been recording and making very thorough notes, as thorough as I care to be, and showing what the feet per second is difference in this stuff. And I'll let you friends, at the end of everything, let you friends decide for yourselves what the margin of error should be. Some of these tests that I've done just might surprise you. So, I'm going to wait till I get all of this gunpowder pucked. Size, well, I shouldn't say pucked, it's pucked now, but get it crushed and sized, put in a can so I make sure that I have enough to do a test. So when I get that accomplished, for real, I'll see you out at the shooting range. So I hope you found this information of value on some level. I hope you'll take a moment to give this video a thumbs up and to share it with your bestest of buds. Bye.